Let's start with what a pointer, or for that matter a reference, actually is. They are variables, and a pointer is a variable that holds the address of another variable. You can then use the address to go kind of through the pointer to get to the original place that it was pointing to. You can change the pointer to point somewhere else, or you can go through it and use it to change the value that it points at. One way to get one is to take the address of an existing variable. So if you had some integer a, you could take its address with the address of operator, which is spelled capital 7, and that would return a pointer to that integer. You met the punctuation ampersand before when we were declaring references. There is a deliberate similarity. Their symbol is supposed to make you think of addresses and pointers and so on, but when the ampersand is before a variable, it means please take the address of this instance, this a. When the ampersand is at the end of a type, it means this is an integer reference or an employee reference or a bank account reference. So they're very different. Here, when we take the address of a, which is presumably an integer, we get an integer pointer. And you can spell integer pointer either int star, all one word, or int space star. Actually, you can have as many spaces as you want before and after the star, but these are the two most popular ways to do it. And I have to tell you, the compiler doesn't care which of these you do, but a lot of humans do. The way you read the first one is you say, I'm declaring an integer pointer called PA, and I'm initializing it with the address of that integer a. The way you read the second one is you say, an integer is the contents of PA, and I'm initializing PA with the address of A. I prefer the first one, but as I often say when I discuss this with people, I'm married to someone who prefers the second one, and we get on just fine. Don't get worked up about where the star goes. The fact is, when you see a star with a type, you're declaring a pointer. When you see an ampersand before an instance of a variable, you're taking the address of a variable, which gets you a pointer, which you can put in some other pointer variable. Now, once you have one, the way you use it, as I alluded, is with the star operator. So star PA means take that pointer and go follow that value. So if there was a numerical value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in PA, it would go to memory location 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's where it would put, in the sample you see here on the slide, it would put the value 5. So the pointer's still pointing to the same place, but we went through the pointer to get to its target. When the target is an object rather than an integer, you can imagine that you could go through the pointer to get to the object at the other end and then say dot and use some member function of the object that's being pointed to. And you can, in fact, do that. However, because of order of operations, you have to put a bracket around it. So you could say bracket star p bracket dot. And that would mean evaluate the pointer, go through the pointer to the memory that's there, and now dot, I want to call a member variable on that. That's kind of awkward, so you can also just use this arrow operator. And you get that by typing 2 characters, minus and the close angle bracket or greater than. And generally people pronounce it points to or arrow. I've heard a couple people pronounce it at, but I don't care for that because I tend to use that to pronounce the open bracket of some function calls. You'll see pointers being used with both fundamental types like integers and with objects in the demo. One important aspect about a pointer is that they're not always initialized to be pointing to something. They're not always initialized with a value that is somebody's address. And it's up to you if you would like to give them the value that means not pointing to anything. We generally tend to refer to that as a null pointer. So if you just say integer pointer p, it has a number in it, the same as all the way back in the first few demos I did with fundamental types. If you just said int I, there was random number in it, whatever bits happened to be in that memory before. But it's not useful, it's not a pointer, and you can't use it. And it's very important if you're going to work with pointers that you get them assigned values when you first create them, even if that value is the hi, I don't point to anything value. Now you have some choices about what value to use for hi, I don't point to anything. You can actually get away with typing the number 0. The compiler will understand that that means something, and you can use that to test the pointer. and make sure that it does point to something, because as you remember, 0 is false and any other number is true. Better to use the all caps null. This isn't actually a language keyword, it's just a macro, something that a lot of people define in their applications. And by a lot of people, I mean everybody. I mean really everybody defines null to 0. And sometimes people stay up and argue and say, what if null was defined to 3? Then what? Haha. Null is defined to 0, and that's that. But you know what? Who cares? Because now in C++ 11, we have a language keyword, null pointer, or null putter, as many C++ folks pronounce it, to kind of distinguish it from the ordinary English word null pointer. This keyword is perfect for saying this is a pointer that doesn't point to anything. And you can test it, and it will return false. A pointer that's got the value null pointer will return false when you say if the pointer. C++ got pointers from C, but it added its own capability, references. And references are, in a lot of important ways, much simpler than pointers. You can think of it as an alias. You can change a pointer to point to a different place. It can point to A for a while and then start pointing to B. References can't. They get their targets set when they're declared, and that's that. Anything you do to a reference, you're actually doing to the target. And you don't have to use different punctuation like star or points to. You can just talk to it directly as though it were the original object. And for most people, that makes references a lot simpler. I will show you them both in action.